What is it? Morning
Good
or
morning, my
is
afternoon.
it morning or afternoon? It's one of those. So welcome back everyone to the second episode of Get Unstuck. It's our new office hours format with my friend, partner, and co-founder, Marcela Shine. In this hour, what we're going to do is we're going to be chatting with an entrepreneur, sometimes two. And what we do is we'll be discussing or trying to help someone get unstuck. So we'll be trying to take a deeper dive into the problems that they're having, give them some new eyeballs, and see if we can help them find a solution. We do this live and in public so that one, maybe you have some great insights that you can share as well. And in addition, there's a chance that maybe you can learn something in the process. In case you don't know, or it's your first time watching, I'm Greg Narain. I'm a serial entrepreneur based in Denver, Colorado. Done a number of probably 14 or 15 different companies in the past 25 years or so. The last two were both venture-backed companies. And I'll let Marcela do a quick introduction of herself as well.
Marcela Shine, nice to see everybody. Greg, good to see you. I've been in marketing technology, product development, and operations for over 20 years. I'm an angel investor and have invested in Greg's companies in the past. And we've been working together for a long time. Greg and I focus on founder craft, on consulting and advising innovators and founders that need to get unstuck or really scale their business. So scalability, automation, operational efficiency are the things that we're constantly thinking about. And we have a lot of fun talking to either our investments, our other co-founders that we've invested in, about their problems, and even when we're stuck ourselves, which is how this program came up today.
Yeah. So we've got one extra guest with us today, one guest host, and then we have our entrepreneur. So I'm just going to add Alex into the mix, and I'll have Alex do a quick intro for herself as well.
Hi, good morning, everyone. How are you?
There we go. Oh, I think we're muted, Alex.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing you.
So good morning. Happy to be here.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me join. I run a social enterprise design consulting firm called Grid Impact based out of Denver, Colorado. And we support social entrepreneurs around the world and nonprofits and big foundations and INGOs in trying to really deliver the best products and services to vulnerable and marginalized communities in underrepresented countries and locations. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome to have you. And Alex and I actually met just this week while we were judging for Project Excite, the startup competition. Hit it off, loved it. And then I just thought she'd be a great guest or addition to our team today. So without further delay, let's add Dave Duplay into the mix and let's get going.
Hey guys, welcome from New Jersey.
Hey, Dave.
Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with having a bit of your background, and then we'll jump into why we dragged you on the show for office hours today.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm currently the chairman and CEO of a nonprofit called Vital Options International. We're a global health foundation focused on generating health education, conversations, and advocacy, along with providing financial support to qualified patients globally. Working in the patient sector has been a passion of mine for a number of years. By background, I'm both an entrepreneur and started my career, I'm going to date myself here a little bit, back in the Big Eight, when I was the Big Eight large accounting and consulting firms. Started with KPMG and then moved over to Price Waterhouse. Left the public accounting and consulting arena and did a number of startups along the way, and a few turnarounds as well. So very happy to be here.
Great, thank you. So I'll give everyone the background here. The entrepreneur that was stuck was actually me. I am on the board. Alex is like, what? I thought I was here to help somebody else. I'm on the board of the Tutu Project, a breast cancer foundation. And we're one of the lucky nonprofits that can say we had money in the bank, and we knew that we wanted to help our community, but we're super small. There's really just a few of us that run the foundation. We partner with other nonprofits that distribute the funding. So we were literally afraid to announce that we had released some dollars to a small organization here in New Jersey, because we knew that if we opened that floodgate, people would start asking for assistance. And I had a really tough feeling that there was going to be hundreds of applicants because of the need in the breast cancer community. So I was racking my brain. Linda and I were really upset about holding on to funds that were needed. And I thought about Dave, because he and I had spoken a few months back, and he told me that he was really turning around the nonprofit Vital Options and the processes that he was creating so that they could scale. Dave and I have worked together in marketing technology in the past. He was a client of mine at my previous company. So we have a long history of trying to figure out scalability, particularly around content marketing and community. So I called Dave and I said, how did you get this problem solved? Please tell me if we can work together. And I was thrilled when he used two magical words. One was HubSpot, and I couldn't believe what he pulled off. And secondly, Amazon. So thanks to Dave, and we'll talk about what these solutions were, we were able to release $15,000 into the community and plan to do more because he's able to get through these applications. And I thought this was a really creative use of HubSpot, and that this is a really important conversation, Alex, as you'll appreciate, for nonprofits, because not all nonprofits think about their business in the same way that marketers, or I'm going to say startups, do. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dave, so that you can explain how you got us unstuck and what the process is that you've created. And then Alex, we'd love to hear about some of the similar problems or solutions that you've seen in the space.
Yeah. I too was stuck, and now I'm found, so to speak. And, when you're trying to, especially in the nonprofit sector, and especially when you're trying to work with patients and caregivers and their families and do things that Marcela and I were trying to do, which was really to provide financial assistance to those that were really financially sideways. And by that, I don't mean financial assistance or writing checks and giving money away. I'm talking about putting groceries in people's homes that can't afford to feed their families as they're going through a cancer journey. And so, when I looked at that and said, gosh, I've got these people willing to give me money to distribute, there's a couple things that I really thought about. And as I kind of sat back and said, it's almost like, be careful what you ask for. I'm given this money and now I have a logistical nightmare on my hands. I said, well, I'm trying to do three things to support people. One, put groceries in their homes. These people, as I mentioned, can't afford to feed their families. Two, turn utilities on that have been shut off, or help with utility payments that are getting ready to be turned off. And three, provide ground transportation to people to their medical appointments. Those were the three things I wanted to do to help. Like I said, I'm not writing checks and sending money out, or gift cards or cell phones. Those were the three things I had on my mind. And it became very clear to me early on that the food situation was the most in demand. People can go without lights, or, manage their use of utilities and, try to find transportation to medical appointments. But when it comes to feeding their families, this is a real problem. So as I sat back, I said, how am I going to get food into these people's homes? And I said, there's one organization that comes to mind that could really help me, and that's Amazon. So I sent off an email one night to Jeff Bezos, and I said, Jeff, from one entrepreneur to another, I'm not asking for a donation. I'm not asking for any money. I'm asking you to point me in the direction of somebody in your organization that can help build an ordering system for me, specifically for what I want to do. And I didn't want, giving people the ability to load up a grocery cart with the foods that they need that will sustain them and their family over a period of time, while ensuring that it's not full of Lay's potato chips and Hostess cupcakes. It's good nutritional food, and then giving me the opportunity to see what's in that shopping cart and approve it and then pay for it and then have those products shipped to that person is what I kind of outlined very specifically in about a half a page email to Jeff. And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, I'm on the phone with 4 executives from Amazon headquarters telling me they were instructed to help me build an ordering system that could handle that. So, looking at the logistical challenges, that was something that I was faced with. And then
I think that's an amazing point. Again, as we think about being founders and getting access, so many young companies don't think they can do something like that, right? Like, let's email Jeff Bezos and see if he can help. I think when you're in social impact, you'd be surprised. Alex, I'm sure you'll agree. Like, you'd be surprised how many leaders are willing to step up, even if you're not a big name in the industry, even if you're just building or starting out. If you've got an idea that their team can help you execute, why not ask?
Yeah, what's really important is to make the ask easy. Don't fire off an email to somebody expecting them to design or solve your problem for you. Outline the problem to them, and then say, here's what I'd like to do, and can you point me in the direction of somebody that can help me? And I think that's, obviously somebody got a hold of that email and passed it off to the right team at Amazon that could help me do that. But I didn't just say, I've got this problem, what am I going to do? Connect the dots, think about what it is you want to do before you're reaching out to companies or other entrepreneurs or founders, but really lay it out very succinctly in as few words as you possibly can, but get the point across. And I think that was why it was probably successful.
Let me ask a question though. I think just relative to Marcela's original sort of the thing she was worried about. I'm curious, do you think it's rational to worry about it, right? Like most startups have the opposite problem, right? Like we tend to embrace the idea of I'm dying for there to be so many people asking me for something, right? And I'm curious, is that maybe not an opportunity, right? As opposed to being worried about it, maybe it should be yeah, I'd rather be overwhelmed and then figure out what to do with it than not be overwhelmed. Right?
Yeah. So I think what I'd say to that is, again, be careful what you ask for, because when we put this out that we were helping these people, the floodgates really opened up. And, you would think I would learn. I'm old enough that I should know better. I put my cell phone number on things I send out. Well, people aren't afraid to call at all hours of the day and night, especially those that are needing groceries for their families. So word of caution, you may want to rethink that approach. But the challenge is how there's going to be so many requests, and there are. How do you prioritize these requests? How do you apply a needs assessment tool to an application? So we have a couple of steps in our process, the dots that we connected. One is the application process for people that are asking for assistance, right? So there's so many foundations out there that will provide assistance. Many of them require tax returns and things to prove that they're in true financial need. So my goal was, when people can't feed their families, you can't wait. I mean, this isn't something you can say, well, we can get to you in a month or 6-8 weeks. That's not going to work. So we needed, the first step was an application that was short, succinct, that could ferret out any bad actors that would come through that would see this, and then apply a needs assessment to every application that comes in. So for example, if you submit an application, you need groceries, and you're employed part-time, and you have one child at home and you're a single parent versus somebody who has 3 children at home, no income, no job, right, and no other support, they're going to rank a little higher in the needs assessment than somebody that has a part-time job and at least has something coming in. So we wanted a short application, succinct, right to the point, asking the right questions to the right people. Then we need to put a needs assessment on top of that so we can rank order these requests, and then the ordering process, right? So if you're asking me for food, I'm going to send you a link. You're going to come to my Amazon account that's set up by our foundation. You're going to be able to fill a grocery basket. You're going to hit done. I'm going to get that basket. I'm going to look in there to see everything you've put in that basket to the amount of money that I've allocated to you. And then if everything looks good, I'm going to hit approve. It's going to charge my credit card from my foundation, and then it's going to send you the product. So, looking at those dots and connecting them, it's really important.
Yeah, I'm going to pause there for a second just to go back to Greg's point and then tying in kind of the next step in the story. Greg, you're right. As any startup, right, we're looking for volume and we want the community that we've built to be engaging with us. But for us with the Tutu project, because there's real people on the end of that with health needs, we just didn't want to put ourselves in a position of kind of deer in the headlight. Let's figure this problem out later. Because as we've seen in the past, we've been in business for over 5 years. When you release money, that money flows out very fast. And so our fear was not having enough volume, enough of a process that could handle volume in place. Like we could have gone through those applications. It could have taken us a month to go through 100 applications, make the phone calls and do everything. But because Dave had already set up this process with Amazon, we at least knew that the end point was there. And finding out that he had an application process that could be scalable, that could be looked at by this process, which we'll jump into, we knew that we were going to be able to at least flow that money into the industry quickly without feeling like we weren't doing enough and feeling handcuffed by the flow of people that came in. So Dave, I'd
like to get Alex in for a second.
I just wanted to maybe take it up one level. If I'm hearing the story correctly, and Dave, feel free to pivot me and correct me, but what I'm hearing is just being really clear about criteria. So what families, what individuals might even qualify for the types of services and offerings that you're providing. And then really communicating those clearly and upfront, especially when we're dealing with vulnerable populations, low income or other types of marginalized populations. I mean, Dave, you so eloquently and clearly stated the application form has to be succinct. It has to be easy. It has to not take up a lot of time. And if we can even prevent families or individuals from spending the time filling out the application, because we've clearly communicated even before that what criteria there are, you're going to be able to weed people out even before that application process, which hopefully then makes your lives easier because there's fewer applications to then have to go through. So for me, it just seems what I'm hearing really clearly is very clear criteria of the types of individuals or families or users that you're trying to reach, and then designing a process that easily and very quickly or efficiently addresses the sort of intake process of them into your system. And that's that should be a design principle for all enterprises and all nonprofits. I mean, that's universal, right?
And it does feel like the trap, right? Like a lot of folks start or rush in with passion, right? Like they want to help, I want to do something. And, if we put our product manager hats on, we're like, okay, this is a product that we are offering. And I love what you did, Dave. You said, look, we have to do this in a regimented, structured way for us to be able to do this effectively. And, the value that we want to deliver can be encumbered by a lack of process or lack of clarity in who our customer is, how we can help them, what our value proposition to them is. By the way, I feel all of this is so relevant right now, with people lining up for PPP and all these other things that are going on right now. So much of our universe is caught up in I think like very similar trappings is what you're described, Dave.
Yeah, you're so right, and we're getting over 200 applications a day. And what happens is social workers and institutions like large hospital networks find out about us, and they're on the front line with these patients every day, and so they're hearing the stories, and so they're saying, hey, go to this vitaloptions.org. There might be an opportunity for you there. HubSpot helps us take in those applications, applies the needs assessment to those applications, but equally as important, it helps us immediately get back to those individuals that fill out the application, right? With a message that says, we've received your application. It's going to be going through the process. You'll hear from us soon. Unfortunately, we can't help everybody. We don't have an unlimited supply of money to do this. So, make sure that you're reaching out in your local areas for other organizations, food pantries, synagogues, churches, other places that can help you out as well. And then, if somebody goes through the application process and, unfortunately whether it's due to a lack of funds or whether there's just others with a higher priority and in the needs assessment, we can't help them, getting back to them right away and letting them know where their application stands is really critical. Again, we're not talking about, going on and buying a pair of shoes or sneakers and, waiting for your Amazon delivery to come. This is a matter of feeding your family. So letting those people know, and it's really hard. I mean, when you have to send those kinds of letters out, the more you can automate it. And quite frankly, what happened before we borrowed the needs assessment tool from Harvard, and they've got some really great tools. So, look.
Dave, can you walk us through that thought process? I really think it's important for us to walk our viewers through the thought process. I was about to ask you. So you found a needs assessment that you and your board were happy with, and you said you used Harvard for that?
Well, yeah. So Harvard's created a number of tools around needs assessment and other institutions. And we just like the way that, the algorithm and the methodology that, we found one that was developed at Harvard. Because when we first started out, before the needs assessment tool, you're sitting there and you're combing through these applications and, your heart is kind of breaking, quite frankly. And you're reading the situation that these families are in, and you're saying, my gosh, now I have to make a decision. Who's going to get help and who's not going to get help? And so if you can apply technology and this needs assessment tool, it takes a lot of that out of your hands, right? So for every piece of the application, there's a numerical rating that's applied. And so it's simply that application goes through the process. It goes through the needs assessment tool. It spits out a number. The higher the number, the greater the need. It gets rank ordered on that list. And you start at the top of the list and you start working your way down until you run out of money. And then I go out and I ring my tin cup again or call Marcel and say, hey, we need to figure out a way to get some more money in here. And we make that work. So, but it's really important. Otherwise, you're going to be, really struggling, and you can automate. There's tools out there. Again, it's connecting those dots. It's the application, then it's the need assessment, then it's the delivery of the food or the letter that goes out that says we can't help you. Then it's the follow up on the back end.
I want to point out though that it's really important that a lot of these tools are free. By the way, like you can set up a Google form, and capture this data. HubSpot is free for a lot of these features are free. So it's not, and they're not tremendously difficult to use, right? Like some of the automations and workflows and some of the scoring and the other things, I think absolutely there's a different kind of line of thinking and maybe you need some help putting something like that together. But just getting the data into a structured place is probably still a great starting point, right? Like anything other than your inbox, right? Like if you just like assume that mentality that your inbox is the worst place for that info to land, right? Like treat it as toxic, right? Like you'll be in a better place like on day one.
Yeah,
Right, that's such an important point to make. That's huge because, and again, there's a lot of ways to connect different tools, right? But a lot of companies are using MailChimp, for example. You can definitely find a way to integrate your MailChimp lists with HubSpot or other CRMs, but making sure that it's data-based so that you can actually use the data to service your constituents well is the most important starting point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's connect the dots, do the heavy lifting up front. You're going to make your life a lot easier on the back end.
Alex, what have you, when you're working with other companies, what have you seen as best practices or other shortcuts that we can recommend?
My initial, what was present for me initially was thinking the opposite, because I think, Dave, what you've implemented seems like a beautiful system, and it's data heavy. It's relying on standardization. It's relying on removing like human bias from a lot of the process as well, which is critical. And frankly, what I see, especially in the nonprofit world, even the conversation we're having, customers versus beneficiaries, the language is even different in the social impact space. And we use a lot of human-centered design in our work. And so we probably take it for granted, but we see all of our end users, yes, they will benefit from, hopefully, whatever program or service, but we see them as customers. And this mindset shift from giving something to someone and they're a beneficiary and you're doing some like paternalistic, lovely thing for them, versus we have a valuable service or product that we are offering. It will benefit them, but so should any product or service that any of us pay for, right? So this mindset shift away from this like paternalistic relationship to a real like value add and customer relationship, to me, that is like a critical piece that a lot of nonprofits get, but many, many, many don't. And it can be a really long process of shifting. And so even just hearing how Dave is describing the relationship between your end users and what you're offering, the data-informed and process-driven approach that you're taking, those things should not be taken for granted, because it sets up a very high integrity, like high respect relationship between the provider and whoever is, receiving the product or the service or the program. So I think in our experience that the social impact organizations, whether they're nonprofits or not, the ones that do really well have already reframed who their customer is, who their end user is, and then deliver based on that, rather than we have this like wonderful heartfelt thing that we're offering, which the two things don't have to be mutually exclusive, I think is an important part. So I really appreciate that about your story, Dave.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. And, by gathering the data in the way that we do, we can go back and we can revisit it. Mm-hmm. And so, my hope is that we get to a point somewhere where we're going to be able to apply some artificial intelligence to the kinds of answers we're getting in the applications and the things that we're seeing. Vital Options is an organization that focuses on chronic, terminal, and rare disease. So that runs the spectrum, right? From oncology to neurology. And being able to take a look at the way, we ask people, well, where do you live? And then we ask them, well, where are you being treated, right? Because we want to know the relationship between where they're living and where they're having to go for treatment. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, there's cost implied in that. There's logistical challenges implied in that. And so as we get more data and we're able to feed it into some second generation AI tools, my hope is that as a healthcare industry, we can get ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. Right now, I feel like, especially now with COVID-19, we're drinking from a fire hose. But if we can take this rich data and this the understanding of patients and where they are in the healthcare delivery continuum, whether they're newly diagnosed, whether they're somewhere in the middle or whether they're approaching end of life. I always say, if you've seen one patient, you've seen one patient, right? Everyone has their own story, and it's very different. It's very personalized. But I'm hopeful that with the second generation AI tools that MIT, that Mass General, that even myself are collaborating on with these institutions will help us get ahead of that curve.
Dave, can I just ask you a question? Because I'm mostly, it's out of my own selfish curiosity, but the fact that your organization is data driven, again, I don't think we should take that for granted, because it's just going to set you up for much longer term success. And you may not have the answer to this today. It may be something that's coming down the pipe for you, but of the X number of people that are applying for your services, what's the sort of acceptance rate versus the rejection rate? And then have you guys ever done any research or insight into why people are being rejected? Like, what is it that they're not qualifying for?
So it's yes to the first part of your question. It's TBD to the second part. So we're able to satisfy somewhere around 26 or 27% of the requests that are coming in, and not every request is the same. Somebody might get $100. A family of 4 or 5 or 6 will obviously get a little bit more than that. So it's kind of individual dependent. But we are looking at that data, and as we're going along, we've coined the term virtual social therapy, because a lot of this, and so if you look at our platform, if you go to vitaloptions.org, and Marcela and I've been having quite a number of discussions about this, about building an online support group and a way to connect these patients of like condition or caregivers to caregivers, for not for the purpose of sending out groceries, but solely for the purpose of virtual social therapy. Because again, these folks at Harvard, they're brilliant, and they've done so much research on, Facebook is doing it as well, about the benefits of social networking and social networks, right? And so my belief is that, people come partially to Vital Options. 1, yes, for financial assistance; 2, for health education; but 3, for virtual social therapy. And I define that as, inspirational, motivational, that kind of support of finding another caregiver like yourself that we can bounce ideas off of. If I'm a caregiver for my parent who has Alzheimer's and you're the same, we can figure out different ways, what's working for you, what should I be trying, where are you finding success? So
I want to jump in and raise this question, and this is a great topic to move into now. So we've talked about marketing automation and using what is typically a sales and lead funnel to drive these applications through, which again, I was just so excited to see that application of a marketing technology and marketing automation for these types of services. We then moved into, as you said, taking the knowledge that's coming in from these applications and creating a support community. And one of the things that is interesting, and I've seen this over and over again recently with clients that I'm working with, is a move away from supporting these groups inside Facebook or inside the social networks and creating private communities. You're using a specific technology to do that, but the ownership and the control of those groups is a really important part of that decision. So I think we should talk about that a bit, Dave, because particularly when you're talking about communities like the cancer community or even some of the other ones, which I'd like you to mention, I think they want to feel more protected. And from a business perspective, the companies want to own the data and really own the community in ways that Facebook doesn't allow you to do. So can you talk to us a little bit about that decision point and why? Well, I think I just said the why, but just confirm our thinking around leaving the social networks and creating your private community to be able to support your constituents.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And, you have to make some decisions, I think, early on as to, where is the revenue or where is the support going to come from? And, when I look at these private networks in the health space, and I look at people that are coming and participating in virtual social therapy, to read some of these stories that these people put out there, they're truly amazing people, right? I mean, one, to share your own personal story of whether you're a patient or a caregiver or a family member of a patient, to share that story in the hopes of benefiting others and making their health journey a little better or a little brighter, you have to really be careful with what you're doing. And by that, I mean, when somebody sits down in front of their computer and they're deciding to share their story with us, the last thing that person wants is to see some piece of advertising popping up, right? They don't want to be sold anything. They're giving one of their most valuable assets, and that's the unvarnished truth about the situation they're in and what they're dealing with day in and day out. And so, I go to I know I do go to a very large extreme to protect that community. Now, there are so many insights in what they share, everything from what medication they're on to what's working to who their doctor is, to what products and services they like, over the counter. So you can harvest that data and that information, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're very transparent with our community about what kind of data we look at, how we use it, what we don't do with it, which is equally as important. So you kind of have to figure out, how am I going to make my money? Are you going to be an advertising model? Are you going to be a research-based organization? Are you going to sell insights? Are those insights going to be blinded and randomized so that people won't be able to figure out who that specific individual is? So all of those things, I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to think about and plan ahead for.
And I think that the other important point to make here, guys, is that brands are trying to use Facebook to target certain conditions, which they're no longer allowed to do. So they have to kind of figure out what the signs or the hints of language are that may point to someone having a certain condition, because those capabilities are no longer available. That being said, there's a smarter way for these brands and these pharmaceutical companies to get to the patient. And I think supporting nonprofits or supporting the companies that are protecting and helping the patients, whether it's with telemedicine or other ways, is a really amazing way to get their brand through without, as Dave's saying, like shoving the advertisement in their face in a time of need. And I really like the idea of the research piece or using data to aggregate, right? So you're not talking about my condition, you're talking about a group of people with that condition, because that brings the benefit to that larger group. And it also teaches us as marketers the best way to approach a problem, right? So whether it's a certain type of medicine, the effects around that, to being able to learn, but look at that in the aggregate, because you are being data driven, is really important. Number one, and number two, it should give brands a different way to approach their potential client without getting so in their face about a really tough time in their life.
That awkward silence.
Yeah, I do like this convergence though, and I like what Alex said. What I think for me, the big takeaway, even in this conversation, is really just how important it is to view what we do as work, right? And as like a company, as a startup unto itself, right? And appreciating that earlier in the process, right? And I think much like you're saying, Dave, like as you're speaking, I'm talking about, what's our business model, right? Like that, that's what I and starting to map the same things, right? And then like when, you're looking at like the same life cycle, like when's a customer likely to churn, right? When are they maturing into a new plan? Where are our partners and vendors that we need to work with to support them as they transition out? And how can we be helpful, and useful in there? And it seems like, and I feel like this is a problem that I've seen from most of the folks I've met in the nonprofit space, is that they could benefit from borrowing a lot from other places. The startup world, I think, is only one universe worth borrowing from, obviously. Like the education system is another place that you could borrow a lot from and a great deal from. And vice versa. I think like all of us have something to learn, right? Like in this triad. I'm curious if and maybe Dave and Alex, maybe you can share a little bit more just about now, like using that lens on things. Like, can you look at like how you've done some of those things now, furthered some of that thinking? Because like I think our audience fundamentally is like a lot of startup folks. I feel like a lot of startup people do want to find ways to be helpful to this ecosystem, and they don't know how to do that either, right? They don't know how to engage. They don't know how to reach out. They don't know how to, and part of that is like, you have to have like compatible Lego pieces, right? Like for us to all be able to build on top of each other.
I obviously don't know everyone personally, so I'm going to make an assumption, but I feel like of the four of us, we have a bit of like an age bias as well. What we have to remind ourselves is that these next younger generations, like if it's not business plus some sort of impact, ecological, human, social, and economic, whatever, they don't want to be a part of it. Like this young generation, they expect businesses to have triple bottom line, quadruple bottom line goals and impact. And so like we have to find ways for these two worlds, not even to exist as two worlds, but to really integrate, right?
I'm only 21, so I don't know. Sorry? I was like, I'm only 21. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, sorry.
I really like that point.
No, that is a great point, Alex. You're right.
But that's also potentially like a mark, like, like everyone can't reach, Jeff Bezos, like Dave was saying earlier on. But you can try to reach any startup or any company that's trying to hire people, right? Like, because they need these avenues, right? Like everyone's got some kind of, corporate responsibility or social agenda, floating around within an organization, and finding ways to tap into that, I think is actually a really strong marketing pitch for your own nonprofit organization out to the world.
I remember, the first time I joined like a co-working space, it was so clearly like a very tech heavy, very startup heavy co-working space. And I showed up, and we're a for-profit, my company, we're a for-profit with a social mission, which is why we call ourselves a social enterprise. But I remember feeling like I did not belong in this space, this physical space, this community of people, because I was like, all I'm trying to do is really make this world a better place. And these like tech startup folk think that I'm like this like hippy dippy, socially focused, whatever human. But I gave it a chance. And I think our team and our community in this co-working space started to realize is that any company, quite honestly, can have some sort of a social impact. It will look different for every company. It will have different goals. It might be in different sectors, different spaces. And every social impact organization, whether it's nonprofit or not, we should all be run like successful companies. Like there are both sides, and I think this is your point, Greg, like both sides need to be learning from the other. And my point is, I think the evolution will be that we're all gonna end up being B Corps or something like that, whatever the next version of that is at some point, because it just makes financial sense. Companies that have strong triple bottom line objectives do really well in the market, and companies that are design led, which usually means customer led, do better on average than companies that are not. So these are just like principles that we should all be adopting and weaving into our work. But
yeah, you're so right. And don't get me wrong. When we look at this data, we do look and think in terms of what's the lifetime value of a patient, right? Because we've got these big institutions, called pharmaceutical companies, biotech, medical device companies. So if I can keep a chronically ill patient on their medication 1 or 2 months longer, what does that mean to the bottom line? If I can use my data to identify potential for candidates for clinical trials sooner and get a new therapy to market, it's not only going to save people's lives and make them healthier, but it's also going to contribute to the bottom line of those companies that are traded on the stock exchange, right? So it's not I don't think it's an and, not an or, right? I think you have to, if you're a nonprofit, you have to be thinking in those terms. Otherwise, you're going to be ringing that tin cup and getting $1 from one person at a time, and that's a hard road to hoe right there. So,
and you're also not achieving your social mission, right? Like, it's not only difficult, but you're also not reaching your actual goals of. And I'm not suggesting that every organization needs to scale to like Amazon levels, but if you're doing the same thing over and over and you're reaching the same person or the same group of people over and over, are you achieving your social mission if you have one? I don't know. I just think that we have to start questioning ourselves and holding ourselves to higher standards as well. So everything you're saying, Dave, resonates.
By the way, and the one warning I would put in here is the same warning I give to every startup. Do not over-optimize either, right? Like, because it is very easy to be like, well, we can't start till we set up the CRM and a database and all these other things, right? Like you want to do the MVP of what it takes,
totally,
right? And little by little, build on and add on to the process and your understanding and the flow of things and your system. So we don't want to encourage you to not start either, right?
But you can do rigorous analytics using super simple Excel-based tools, right? Like, it doesn't even have to be a product.
Yeah. Get whatever it is you're delivering to people in the market sooner rather than later. Yeah. The market's going to help you self-correct.
Yes.
So if people don't like my application, they're going to tell me they don't like my application.
And are you willing to hear it and listen, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Take that version 1.0 and get it out there. Get people working with it. Get data through the process. Start looking at it. Right. I agree with you. Don't wait. You don't have to have every I dotted and T crossed before you jump in the market. Get in there and go as you long, because you're going to learn. And let me tell you, technology is changing so fast, so it doesn't matter. So what you did today could look different tomorrow. But if you're always waiting for the best thing or the newest thing, or getting it 100% perfect, by the time you get there, that the train is going to have left the station and there's going to be new technology. So get in the market, get people using your data, your tools, right? Start small, but start.
Yep. And I think the other key thing is talk to the end user, right? Just putting something out there and expecting some comment on Facebook or on Instagram and trying to glean information from that just isn't enough. Reach out to the people that are that version 1. Make sure you're actually trying to use that email address to create a conversation. We're living in a world now where anybody will hop on Zoom with you, right? So I think with this entire COVID situation, we as marketers have an even greater opportunity to sit here face to face anywhere. I mean, my mom's on Zoom now, right? So it's no longer, going back to the age thing, right, Dave? Like, we were supporting, let's say, an older age group initially, and you would never think they were going to join another community or they were going to get on Zoom and talk to us. That's changed now. Mm-hmm. So there's a real opportunity to put a face to the product and a personality behind it. And videos are definitely big, but have the conversation. Don't expect that just a push solution is going to get you the answers that you need. Take advantage of this massive change in the world to talk directly to your constituents, because you can get a focus group of 10 people on the line while you're having an educational discussion. You can have someone doing a quick community management off to the side in a private chat group while you're focused on the conversation, right, Greg? So, you can share those responsibilities. And as Greg's talking, Marcela can be asking a user a question based on a comment they made. These are really great advances that we've made that are no longer age specific. It's not just the millennials using Instagram. It's not just a younger generation on video technology. And I think that's an amazing opportunity for us to really, really get in touch with the people that are looking for our products.
I'll actually add on to that, because to combine, I think, what you and Alex had said, if you don't know how to use these things, you can recruit people to help you with them, right? And there are people who just like, we use the example, like if you don't get social media, then get someone who gets social media, right? Like, and I'm sure someone will volunteer to help you, in the process of doing these things. If you don't get how to like set up the spreadsheet or how to set up a pipeline or workflow or automate things or whatever, email marketing, whatever it's going to be, because you are doing something good, there are likely loads of people willing to help you. And it's another thing where we always ask for volunteers, but we don't ask for experts, right? And we should, right? Like when we're there, when you put up what you need, I need an expert in X. You don't need blanket volunteers. Like blanket volunteers, like maybe you do, but the reality is you should be trying to get as much expertise in the house as quickly as possible, right? Every startup that's ever been successful, why do VCs invest money in startups? When they feel like the team, right, is going to do something amazing. And they don't want, just a bunch of grunts. They want a bunch of high performing, exceptional people. And I'm sure every nonprofit out there has access to those kinds of people, but we don't usually think to ask for it, right? We usually just sort of like hope and pray and then maybe feel overwhelmed by all the things that are coming at us and don't know how to react to it.
Yeah, you're so right, and I have to give a lot of credit to, the Tutu project, because, first of all, I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan since I was introduced to them, and the work that Bob and Linda Carey do to help breast cancer patients and simply put a smile on somebody's face when they see Ballerina Bob, in some exotic place in the world in his pink tutu. It's truly amazing. But to have, the foresight to ask, to reach out for help and say, we've got these funds, there is this need, how can we collaborate? And I think, and Greg, no offense should be taken here, but female founders are the best collaborators. I got to tell you, I mean, they want to collaborate. I mean, us guys, wow.
Hey, Greg, I didn't see you highlight that point down at the bottom. Dave just got his quote card of the week pulled out.
So, when Marcela, when I see her calling on my cell phone, I always pick up no matter what I'm doing, because I know it's going to be something good and I know it's going to be collaborative. And so, yeah, you have to think like that. If you expect all the skills to be within your four walls, you better look again. Collaboration going forward is going to be so important.
Yeah, I mean, look, Greg and I are the ultimate bootstrapping kings and queens, right? I don't even want to count at this point how many startups we've either bootstrapped directly or helped bootstrap. And with our nonprofit in particular, we never had this plan of, having 20 people in a back office, and we want to do a lot efficiently. Don't get me wrong, if the money starts rolling in tomorrow and we can grow, then fantastic. But really we had a very clear vision for going back to product, right? We had a very clear vision on what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and that collaborating with others was the fastest way we could get it to market. And that's kind of been a mantra for us all the way through. And I think it's actually, even again, I got stuck, right? And I'm stuck on a couple other things. And Greg, your point, I just wrote myself a note. I didn't think to go into our community, right? Like the actual community itself, to ask for specific types of help. I go to my community, like you guys, right? My experts, and ask for help. And I always get it because it's for the nonprofit. I always get it, even if it's for any of my clients, because we're all founders and helping each other out. But there's a certain excitement when somebody raises their hand to help with a nonprofit, but I have never gone out to our community and said, hey, we're looking for an expert in such and such, because I almost feel like we're protecting them from asking them things outside of their own needs. And I think that's a great suggestion that I'm going to take and move along to see if we can get unstuck on a couple other issues that we're having.
Absolutely. Well, folks, it's been a wonderful hour. Actually, it went by faster than I even thought. Unfortunately, we are up on time, and I want to thank Dave and Alexander for being with us today. It was a really great conversation. I think the amount of overlap, as much as everything in life, most things are the same, right? It's pattern recognition goes a long way if you can master it. We look forward to having you both come back at some point in the future. Maybe if you have other problems, maybe to be on the other side and helping us host and help other startups or founders. So thank you so much for being here. In case you were tuning in, you've been watching Get Unstuck. It's our weekly office hour show where we try to solve one problem specifically. You can find the episodes over at foundercraft.com. You can catch us next week, Friday, at the same time, 10 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time, 12 o'clock Eastern. And by all means, we are looking for more people to come on the show. So if you would like to actually be on our future episodes, just head over here. It's ask.fan/getunstuck-apply. So thank you, everybody. It's been great to see you. And I'm looking forward to doing this again.
Thanks. Good to see you, Alex. Nice to meet you. Thanks.
You too. I love meeting
Everybody be safe. Social distance.
That's right. Bye, everyone.